Evil West is a ton of blisteringly-paced old-school fun that will just as often remind you of the worst parts of linear action games released during the 6th console generation. There's a definite charm factor in returning to simpler times, an era in which developers were content to take you on an 8 to 10 hour, high-intensity rollercoaster ride of set pieces and arena battles, utterly devoid of fuller content to pad out the experience or facilitate grindy progression mechanics. Now, of course, I say that as an older and increasingly nostalgic gamer, so others might find the dated elements more detrimental to the overall experience. Now, despite an opening sequence that immediately establishes the cast as a mix of wisecracking hero cliches and moustache-twirling villains, the world is an interesting one that takes little inspiration from the iconic World of Darkness IP. Evil West is set in a steampunk version of the late 1800s, with humanity on the cusp of harnessing electricity, while America's westward expansion is threatening the natural order of mythical creatures. Think trolls, werewolves, and a secretive vampire society. As humanity's population grows and technology advances, these supernatural creatures are pushed into a desperate alliance as they find themselves shifting from predator to prey. A recently elevated vampire lord and his sired daughter, both shunned by a council of vampire elders unwilling to deviate from traditions, seeks open war against humanity and are pursuing experiments to control the change, the process by which other creatures become vampires, in order to build an army. Opposing them is the Rentier Institute, a government-funded organization fielding technologically advanced monster-hunting agents that wage a secret war to defend America from creatures that most of humanity assume are myths. The protagonist, Jesse Rentier, son of the current commander, finds himself and a few surviving companions on the run, desperately fighting back after the vampires strike a devastating first blow. What follows is a decently lengthy adventure that has Jesse saving other agents, upgrading his gear, and discovering the source of a new vampiric mutagen used to create an impressive roster of distinctly gruesome foes. It's not a particularly well-told story, but Evil West uses frequent and stylish cinematics that both entertain and highlight the truly god-awful dialogue. I'm usually forgiving of voice work in pulpy action games, especially if it adds to the experience, but you need to go in forewarned. Some lines would have felt too forced or edgy for the mid to late 2000s, and I'm amazed they weren't vetoed in 2022. The upside is that most lines are so stupid they lose their ability to offend, and, honestly, there were moments in Evil West that made Outriders script feel highbrow in comparison. Speaking of Outriders, it's the game Evil West immediately had me thinking back to, an older style of video game wrapped in a modern skin. That's it, it's no traditional third-person shooter, despite the weirdly misleading marketing. Instead, it's a fast, reactive, and increasingly technical action game that has you shift smoothly between melee, firearm, and gadget attacks, make use of environmental kills, dodge or counter screen-filling boss attacks, and pull off finishes and special moves to ensure a steady flow of health and energy orbs. If anything, the gameplay feels closer to that of melee-focused action games like Devil May Cry, God of War, or maybe Darksiders. Now sure, you stomp about in third person, looking for all the world like a Gears of War protagonist, and you can use a variety of ranged weapons to hit weak spots and conveniently misplaced explosives. However, your firearms serve as supporting tools, used to trigger distance switches, burn away obstacles, thin out lesser minions, and interrupt powerful attacks from afar. Even the way they work feels designed to support the fluid melee combat. Yes, the left trigger will draw and aim one of several specialized weapons, and you can fire it with the right trigger like a traditional third-person shooter. But the basic pistol is a quick pull of the right trigger, while both the shotgun and the electrifying crucifix are mapped to face buttons, alongside your evasion and quick heal functions. There's no ammunition limit, just reload and cooldown times to consider, so it's a perfect setup for reflexive actions, allowing you to pull off a snapshot at a distant enemy when prompted, or stun a charging enemy mid-stride and break out your gauntlet. I guess, in theory, you could whittle away most enemies with your firearms, but if you're looking to do any real damage, and do it with flair, you need to use your fists and electrified Rentier Institute gauntlet. You can combo together your basic strikes, uppercut and cannonball enemies into hazards or each other, use an electric grapple to dash forward or drag an enemy towards you, leaving it stunned for a flurry of blows. You can power slam the ground to make room, snapshoot or smash down enemies you've launched into the air, and overcharge your gauntlet to tear around for a few seconds piling on damage. By the finale, you'll have a ton of tools at your disposal, and doling out vampiric beatdowns always looks spectacular. Thankfully, Evil West eases you in, and the combat system is deceptively basic at first, with only a few melee strikes, the 6-shooter pistol, the ability to dash and roll, and limited enemy variety. However, you'll constantly gain new gear as the story dictates, experience points towards Jesse's character level, and find bags or chests full of cash. Each new level grants a perk point you can put into upgrades for your fists and gauntlet, while cash is spent on firearm upgrades, all of which are level-gated to keep the combat encounters balanced. These upgrades feel essential, offering a mix of new combat skills, modifications to existing moves, and changing bullet behavior. as Evil West follows the classic approach to ramping up the challenge, by introducing mini-boss variants that later become common foes. Eventually, you'll encounter them together, accompanied by a ton of lesser minions for even tougher battles. Of course, there are also plenty of named bosses with unique attack patterns, weak spots, and supporting minions to defeat. Now, there's not enough XP or cash to upgrade everything in one run, incentivizing a New Game Plus run, but during the campaign, you can respec any time you return to your base between missions, allowing for some experimentation. Now, while the combat system is unexpectedly technical and satisfying, everything else in Evil West feels a little dated, for better and worse. The most obvious contrast to the modern games is the restrictively linear environments, with abundant invisible walls, and light puzzles that force you to circumvent obstacles a child could climb over. Levels channel you from combat arena to combat arena, which keeps the pacing brisk, but also feels formulaic as it never evolves. Side paths always lead to documents cache, or really optional battles that reward a large chest with a bonus perk or cosmetic item. It's not a structure that usually bothers me much, but Evil West is also inconsistent about backtracking. If you're a compulsive collectible hunter, Evil West will test your patience, and force you to replay levels as you often automatically transition between areas just by getting close, and there's no rhyme nor reason as to why you can hop back over or clamber over some obstacles, but not others. It's also worth noting the online co-op, which was a great addition, but also its somewhat dated structure. The second player, a clone of Jesse, can drop into a game to assist the host, with the difficulty and enemy mix adapting for 2 players, but progress is only saved for the host. The visual impact goes hand in hand with the level design, as while many locations look great and convey an impressive sense of scale, you'll be observing them from the narrow path you're allowed to travel. I'd say Evil West falls somewhere between mid-tier and big budget when it comes to presentation, and is definitely straddling console generations. Realism is clearly not the intent, so environments and character models feel oversized, angular, and stylized. Most enemies have a distinctive profile, essential for chaotic battles, and attacks generate abundant gore and particle effects. Despite the western setting, you'll see a good mix of environments beyond the desert towns and canyons of the opening stages. Think spider-infected caves, leech-filled forests, snowy research outposts, overrun human settlements, moonlit swamps, and vampiric temples, often after dusk and always bathed in an abundance of gore and literal pools of blood. Gunfire and melee impact sound fantastically meaty, and moments of exploration feature a creepy ambience and a soundtrack that's atmospheric but never dominating. On the next-gen consoles, you're getting sharper visuals, 60 frames per second gameplay, albeit not for the Series S, and load screens so fast that I could never get through the mission briefing text. My only issues are the aggressive motion blur, which you can't disable on console, and aggressive occlusion culling that leads to flickering surfaces when moving around indoors. So, wrapping up, here is Evil West 4. Based on the marketing, I expected a fun but dumb third-person shooter for those who missed the Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3 era. Instead, I got a surprisingly technical and slick action game with some smartly incorporated third-person shooting, all saddled with dated level design and storytelling reliant on frequent cutscenes. So long as you've not been converted to the make the numbers go higher busywork in so many modern games, Evil West also offers up plenty of content for the price, with multiple difficulty levels, a New Game Plus mode, and the aforementioned online co-op. If you're a third-person shooter fan, yearning for games like Gears of War or the more recent Outriders, Evil West is still worth a look, but it's no cover shooter and has a strong focus on mixing attack styles. If, however, you're a fan of technical, melee-centric and combo-heavy action games, think Devil May Cry or God of War, then ignore the marketing and put Evil West on your radar. If you've got this far, please consider giving the video a like and maybe subscribing to our channel as it helps us grow.